Iran said that we are going to attack North Israel. No, that's not the tit for tat policy. You should have said that we are going to, uh, destabilize Tel Aviv, Haifa. That's the equation that you should have set.
So in a sense, I would come and say, from a European or Western or kind of point of view, they should ask themselves what they have done in this battle. Have they, for example, tried to change the balance of power in the fight against Zionist forces in their own cities, in Dusseldorf, in Paris, in London, etc.? What have they done for axis of resistance and for this kind of fight against imperialism in the region?
They are now using the pager explosives as explosives with the drones to return to sender against the Zionist forces.
The danger is now Rita Parsi's speeches, for example, get happily translated by liberals inside Iran to say, guys, look at that. We, as a winning, victorious party, we should sit down on negotiation and make a detente with the US like every other country. War is over. Wartime is over. Whereas people on the street know that the war cannot be over.
Good day, everyone. We are here with another show. We are here with a power panel, of course, with Vanessa, who is a veteran of BettBeat Media. But we are also here with Iranian powerhouses, Ehsan Safarnejad and Alizadeh, and we have you guys on to talk a bit about the things that are going on today vis-a-vis the Iran war, of course, geopolitics, and who better than to talk to both of you, Ali and Ehsan. So I would like to give the first question to Vanessa. Vanessa is very up to date about everything that's going on. So please, Vanessa, why don't you start the discussion?
Just to basically get an update on where we are, obviously the ceasefire, perhaps not unexpectedly, isn't holding. We've seen in the last 48 hours, let's say, the targeting of American bases in what I call the Zionist Arab states on the Persian Gulf, but also Jordan, which for me is very interesting. Targeting one of the US bases in Jordan. And I know, Ehsan, you and I have spoken about this before, that why these Arab states on the Persian Gulf in particular are being targeted is to reduce the ability or to take down some of the layers of air defense for Israel. So I guess my question is, are we seeing a progression in that strategy with the targeting of Jordan? And if so, where might that progression lead us? I guess that question is to both, but maybe Ehsan, if you want to start.
Well, yeah, precisely what you said. The strategy of targeting these countries is in order to take out their radar systems. Those radars provide invaluable information to Israel, which then use those informations to intercept the Iranian missiles. Obviously, United States has integrated satellite radar systems with one another, and again, these informations are transferred. So I think that right now, considering the fact that Iran has taken out the long-range radars in the Arab Zionist states in Persian Gulf, now it's time to move on to Jordan, but targeting Jordan based on the statement that IRGC put out there is more so about targeting the U.S. Aviation assets more so. And I think that based on the new types of missiles and drones that the IRGC has used, it's a little bit as well testing the waters to see what kind of damage they can inflict in Israel. They used a new member of Khaybar Shekan family. They have tweaked it in such way that it's it's slower, but it's more precise, right? So they are testing to see how successful that missile would be in terms of bypassing the air defense systems without to escalating a level further, because targeting Israel, on a rapid basis would mean escalation, at least in the eyes of the Americans, right? So, in my viewpoint, they're testing their missiles, they're testing the water, and they're also targeting the aviation assets, fighter jets of United States that are located in Jordan.
Ali?
Thank you very much for inviting me. So, last night, that was the second night of U.S. attacks against Iran, and I think we have to look at it from a slightly further point of view. What happened in the last week? We are on day 103 of the war, and we are on day 64 of ceasefire. So, in that ceasefire, I think US and Israel have slightly gained in relationship to where they ended the war and the ceasefire started. And I think Iran has been relatively static. So in what it was before, because by the time that ceasefire happened, I think that's when Israel started advancing into Lebanon, and that's when Trump started his blockade over Iran's closing of the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, from one side, every day passing is a day that is adding to the shortage of oil in the global market. So today is day 104 of like closure of a Strait of Hormuz. And then look at what Trump said yesterday in his social truth post. He bragged about having in a clandestine way, allowing 100 million barrel in the last 30 days, in the last month. What does it mean? Well, that doesn't mean much, because in the last 30 days, he himself, by blocking Iran's passage of oil, has deprived the oil market of about 2 million barrels a day from Iranian, 2 to 2.5 million, about 60 to 75 million barrels himself. So even if his claim is true, which Iran has adamantly rebuffed and kind of denied, and also in the United States there's a big debate and people say we have never seen any evidence of that. But even if his claim was true, that 100 million at best has only compensated Iran's absence from oil market. I understand that, but nonetheless the pressure is also mounting on Iran, because Iran hasn't managed to sell its oil. And more importantly, from a strategic point of view, I think Israel has advanced in south of Lebanon. So on Sunday, Iran came and said red line is attacking Dahiya or south of Beirut. And then they did attack Israel. Many people kind of started claiming that's the first time ever a country has attacked Israel on behalf of a third country or third party. And so it's a big strategic shift. I say, yes, it might have been 4 months ago, but maybe Iranian standards had been raised due to this war. And so maybe that was not enough. Maybe Iran should have done something much more for south of Lebanon rather than south of Beirut. So from that point, let's come back to like this tit for tat with the United States. I think Trump is testing the waters, see how much he can push the red lines with Iran, and also pushing them for negotiation or surrendering to the terms that Trump has kind of basically proposed. And I believe Iranians should and could have been much more active and dynamic from the day that ceasefire started. This is not only what I say. I think many people who are close to Iranian negotiators, especially to Mr. Ghalibaf, who before were like justifying every aspect of Iran's action from ceasefire, now retrospectively think they should have been more active and they should not have been in this limbo waiting for negotiation. So now the frustration rising in Iran, I think, is making them think twice. And now again, IRGC and the army are, I believe, are getting a slight upper hand, and proposing to act a bit more more actively. So we have to see if this sit-hat continues. It also gives opportunity for Iran to project power in a slightly more unpredictable way, because Iranian responses have been too proportionate and too predictable, and I don't think they can gain much in that sense. Also, as Ehsan said, yes, Iran has been taking off radars, but the other side has been doing the same thing as well. When Israel attacked Iran as a response to Iran's attack on Sunday, they attacked a valuable radar system in Iran, and also US did attack Iran's radars both on Wednesday night and on Tuesday night. Also, the week before, when US attacked Bandar Abbas, Qeshm, Jasm, and Sirik on 2 or 3 nights on a row, and they led to the death of 4 people in one go and then 2 other people in the other go. They also attacked both launchers, also some of the missile silos, and radars. So it seems that US and Israel, maybe on the other, behind the scene, are preparing themselves for the possibility of a much more major attack if the situation rises.
Right, I hear that sentiment more. I also saw today a discussion between Dimitri Laskaris and Sulaiman. I think his name is Sulaiman Ahmed or something. A new guy. He's doing interesting interviews, and I saw that Sulaiman said also he said that he felt that the momentum of Iran was being taken away. It had that momentum in the beginning, and it's now kind of slowly dissipating. Dimitri was a bit disagreed with that. On the other hand, you also have somebody you also see in the social media lately. He's a friend of Ryan, a Christian, I think, Vanessa. His name is Dawson. What's his name? Dawson something Dawson. I forgot his first name, but he's also Ryan Dawson.
Ryan Dawson. Ryan Dawson.
Yes, also Ryan Christian, Ryan Dawson. Yeah. So his name is Ryan Dawson. Ryan Dawson is very direct. Sometimes I really enjoy listening to that guy, and he's like, Iran is weights too much. It's too proportionate. Too much tit for tat. The longer you do it, the more you get. The momentum is taken away. You just need to blow up Israel. That's his opinion. Now, of course, these are all outside opinions. I think Ehsan has a more nuanced way of seeing that. Ehsan is often annoyed by these outside commentators. So please, Ehsan, what do you think about this whole discussion? Is the momentum still there? Do you think we should see this more nuanced? What do you think?
This, as the saying goes, the demons are in the details. Not until you get to the nitty-gritty data, numbers, stats, you can unpack what is really happening here. My esteemed compatriot, who's much better analyst than me, mentioned something about Mr. Trump and how he has said he has contributed to release of 100 million barrels of oil from the Persian Gulf. 70% of, let's look at the data, because I said that data is important, detail is important. Based on the number of vessels that have crossed the Strait of Hormuz and the fact that 70% of the vessels have exited the strait, and 42% of the number of vessels that have exited the Strait of Hormuz, if you calculate the number that Persian Gulf Strategic Authority has provided us with, you see that 98 oil tankers have exited the Strait of Hormuz. Considering that each oil tanker, if you consider them to be VLCC, very large crude carriers, you will get roughly around the same number. Each tanker can carry out 1.9 to 2.1 million barrel of oil. You get roughly the same number that Donald Trump, lying Trump, has stated. So it's all about numbers. It's all about understanding each number, understanding that there is a very, very difficult calculus that is taking place inside the Iranian decision makers. Now, many people are very diplomatic when they talk about the Iranian officials. I hate Ghalibaf's guts. Let me put this very straight. But I constantly find myself in a position to defend him. It's the most interesting thing ever, because the people who don't know enough about this situation get involved. And rather than criticizing the decisions that they make, I have to address the things that are actually incorrect. You mentioned the name of this guy who thinks that he is an authority about the current situation. Does he know what the total electricity production in Iran is? Does he know the number of uh, petroleum plants that have been attacked by United States and Israel? Does he know how much oil we export? Does he know how much our revenue has decreased because of the US naval blockade? Does he know? There are a million questions that I can ask, and quite frankly, I don't have all the information. I don't know every answer, but I'm willing to bet that I know far more than these people. You might remember that study that took place that was saying, it was about whether people are uh, qualified to know that they are qualified to have an opinion about something. And quite interestingly, being, having being in good judgment of knowing whether your opinion matters or not is basically, it requires the same amount of uh, traits, features that actually make you be good at those things, right? What is happening here, and the way that these individuals are talking about it, is due to the fact that they haven't studied the war for the past 30 years. I always mention this. There is this video of General Salami teaching a course in the IRGC University about how to fight United States. Currently, there is an 8% drop in the strategic oil reserves, globally speaking, right? Funnily enough, if you look at United States strategic oil reserves, it still hasn't reached the low point during the Biden administration. We need a few more weeks in order to reach that point, right? And if you're talking about mounting up the pressure through what I've talked on your show, attacking the physical scarcity of the commodities that move past the Strait of Hormuz, that number is actually very important. I keep bringing this topic up that there is a very logical chronology in everything that is taking place. I had to go on many shows at the beginning of the war and tell people that, look, uh, you go and talk about the price of oil futures, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because these tankers that are in the region, it would take anywhere between 14 to 31 days to get to their destination, meaning that as we speak right now, there hasn't been any disruption in the oil supply chain, right? And the refineries can work perfectly fine based on the stockpile that they have, right? So you have had that deadline, right? That 31-day mark, and then you had the period in which you were waiting for price of oil to reach 100 $110, something like that. And then moving past that, there was another juncture in time which we currently are sitting in. It's the juncture that you're waiting for the strategic oil reserves to sort of deplete, right? To go into a certain extent. And in that sense, it becomes very important to know how, for example, a person like the executive of um, Enron. I've forgotten the name of Exxon. Apologies. Exxon, yes,
Exxon.
Exxon Mobil has talked about what the projected price of oil will be. But these individuals don't understand this. So they expect Iran to fight while it is being bombed and wait for the price of oil to increase. No, the Iranian strategy is different. Let the price of oil increase, let the strategic oil reserves deplete before we get our civilians bombed, right? So in that sense, and by the way, I'm not even going to go into the military aspects of it. I haven't seen these individuals to any of the concerns that, for example, I have when it comes to carrying out a military strikes against Israel. So I think that they're completely unqualified to have an opinion on this. Apologies, as the saying goes, uh, no investigation, no right to speak about the matter.
Yeah, I think that line is from. I think Mao said something very much like that. If you don't do the work of gathering knowledge, then shut the fuck up. Like you have nothing valuable to say. I couldn't agree more. I just find this. I just find it distasteful, especially when someone doesn't really know anything about military affairs, and yet they're spouting off with their opinion, very strident opinions. It's just an annoyance. So I definitely agree with you there. I have a question, but Ali, sorry, I kind of jumped in before you. Did you want to follow up to that?
No, you continue with your question.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering. I mean, I'm sure Ehsan, you were extremely surprised when Trump announced, I'm the decision maker, I called the shots, and then like a few hours later, Netanyahu completely did the opposite of what Trump said, and then he had to dial that back. I'm just curious, and this is just my own curiosity, but other people might have similar questions. How are the people in Iran dealing with this? Because they're still under siege, effectively, not on land. So I hope that there's enough supplies coming in over land. But how is the morale of people, at least where you are in the media, as far as you can tell? And this I actually would go to both of you.
So
Let's start with Ali then.
If I may, because that's going to take the conversation somewhere else. Let me just go back to what Ehsan said. I mean, I understand because there's we need to have a kind of analytical clarification here, because we are not talking the same kind of planes, and we have to. I think we are talking from two different points. What Ehsan says, I can actually agree with him, because people who have very little knowledge about Iran and kind of from outside, they say exactly why Iran didn't destroy Israel and didn't do this and that. And so actually the video that Ehsan refers to from General Salami, which I showed yesterday in my program, and goes back to 1993, in which Salami explains how they designed the strategy of asymmetrical warfare, which seeks attrition and long-term kind of attrition in order to exhaust the kind of stronger enemy. So these are all designed. So there's definitely no doubt about the fact that Iran has a very sober and clear strategy for what it's doing, and is not a war game done on Xbox and PlayStation to go and destroy Israel in one go. So Iran is a country under sanction, is a country liberated in 1979, of course, as a kind of country struggling against imperialism and Zionism, should have its own style, and we've seen how powerful it is. There's one debate, and I agree with Ehsan on that. The other debate, where I'm coming from, and what I was saying before, which comes from inside Iran and is like somehow is mired with Iran's domestic debate, and that relates to the fact that Iran is a hybrid system. Iran is not Hezbollah, Ansarullah, or one of these guerrilla liberatory kind of the liberation, national liberation armies. Iran is a state, is a combined and uneven developed state with a very complicated multi-layers of society and capitalist kind of on class and in relation with different parts of the world. So in that sense, I would say, yes, the ceasefire to some extent made Iran internally lose the momentum. And when I look at the balance of forces inside the country, those who are and have been in the last 15 years pushing for negotiation are somehow trying to have upper hand over IRGC and the army. That's a different debate to have. Yeah? And of course, they have their own rationale because Iran does have economic problem. As we've seen back in January, there was the economic problem, which opened the gap for Israel and America to do their own hybrid warfare, leading to the death of 3,000 people. So their rationale of someone like Pezeshkian, president, or some people in the National Security Council is we have to have a very delicate balance between our economic needs and gaining a strategic advances in the field. So and now that debate is open. I mean, I'm sure Ehsan has seen what Mr. Nabavian, one of the high-ranking MPs, have said about 4 days ago about the 14 points of agreement now being dealt between Iran and US, and how when you look into it, it looks like a retreat from the 10-point agreement that at the day of ceasefire, Iranian National Security Council offered. And so it seems that, unfortunately, once again, the internal debate, especially between those who still believe that there is a possibility of coming to some form of detente with the United States, they are slightly getting upper hand. Of course, not anything similar to a year ago, 2 years ago. The martyrdom of Ayatollah Khamenei and also the war has drastically changed balance of forces. The presence of millions of pro-revolution and pro-resistance Iranians every night on the street has drastically changed balance of forces. But nonetheless, you have to remember, these people are strong. They have access to media. Also, they have significant the ownership of the assets inside Iran, and so they have economic power, etc. So that's what I was discussing. So I believe there's one thing: IRGC has a long-term plan, but look at that. The language that the negotiators and the political class are using are they're creating relief for Trump. Why oil is $94 per barrel? Why Brent has come to 94.23 despite two nights of conflict with Iran? Is impossible. I mean, I know that there are manipulation inside U.S. market, but if Iranian political class was in par and was following IRGC and the army and would not allow Trump to calm down the market, the oil price would have been much more. So in a sense, one aspect is the political class in Iran and the spokespersons who are in charge of negotiation should have doubled down on what the army and the IRGC have been doing in a calculated, calibrated way, as Ehsan put forward, but they haven't. It seems that they're going against each other. And by their more or less trying to be diplomatic, from Mr. Arakchi to Mr. Ghalibaf to the rest of those who've been talking, by being too diplomatic, they somehow, I don't know, inadvertently possibly, they have allowed Trump to not to tame the price of the market, to tame the oil prices. Because look at that, we are about 4 weeks away from the shortage of oil reserves and the end of oil reserves, and everyone is surprised why the oil is at least should be 115, 117 now. Why is it like 94? So that, I think, could have, so if Iranians wanted, they could have exacerbated the situation more. Why did Trump come yesterday and try to accelerate the situation and intensify the situation, going for attack? Because yesterday was the day that inflation rate in the US reached 4.2 and was announced. That was the day that actually Trump was feeling slightly worried about the doomsday coming. We all believe that the doomsday coming possibly by the end of June. So, and but then when he gets closer to doomsday, he doubled down and tripled down, and he like really suddenly come for hyperbolic threats. Remember on day 39, when he kind of neighbored a form of nuclear threat, was because that was a dangerous day. That was a day that the oil had reached 114. And actually, he came and said, I will destroy all Iran's infrastructure. I will make a big glow in the country. Yeah? Why did he come and almost like use indirect nuclear threat? Because he was worried. So in a sense, the moment he comes to his worries and his things are getting intensified, at the same time, they put pressure for negotiation, and I believe they use very seductive promises at the moment. So whenever they get weak in the US, in Washington, they become more seductive and give more seductive promises, including $350 billion of investment fund, for example, which I believe never will come to fruition. I mean, so in a sense, what I'm saying, and I repeat, I think Iran, as they did in 39 days, if they would kind of attack facilities in the region, which would put oil, gas production and LNG production out of market for a couple of years, rather than things which are possible to be retrieved within few months, that would put a lot of pressure on US. So I think, and that's not what I'm saying, people inside Iran are saying. I had an interview with Dr. Fouad Izzadi last night in my Persian show, in which he believed that for every kind of attack that US does to Iran, Iran should say in advance and preemptively that we will attack these refineries, which will like not be repaired for the next 2 years. So in a sense, Iran should go back to the offensive, and that was supposed to be the strategy from day one, to damage the oil market for long term, rather than things which can be always repaired and retrieved. And in a sense, Iran should target Trump's confidence and Wall Street's confidence at the moment. So if you look, that's my theory, and I would like to understand, to listen to what Ehsan says. I want someone to explain to me why market confidence in the US and the West is not more shattered despite 103 days closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Just on that one little point, I would just want to reiterate, you have to give a lot of blame to market participants, as they say. But remember, wealth is extremely concentrated. So the real market participants that are basically pricing in a quick deal in the next few weeks, we're dealing with a lot of absolute fucking morons. Like, I have no other way of putting it. I've been listening so much to investors, to bank executives, in the business press, and they're on another planet. Like, so just to throw that out there, I'm not so sure like to what extent you can actually blame anyone in the Iranian government. You could give a lot of credit to Trump for jawboning the market really effectively, but I don't even think he deserves it. I just think that we should be blaming the idiots with a lot of money in that market for being just suckers and muppets. And I don't think it can, gravity has to eventually, exert its effects.
This is
Ehsan?
yeah. Okay, this is the difference between someone who knows about what he's talking about and like other people, because you actually, rather than wanting to shoot yourself in the head, you actually enjoy listening to their counter arguments, and these are valid concerns. These are the things that I do myself am very critical about. But the problem is that there is so much criticism from wrong angles and from lack of correct information that it sort of creates again, it makes me find myself at the uncomfortable position of actually defending the policies that I do not actually agree with, right? Uh, Very key term that he used, Mr. Alizadeh, said internal momentum. That's actually very much the case. We are seeing a sort of shift in what's happening, and that, I mean, as far as I know, ceasefire, militarily speaking, could make sense, but then now in these episodes of back and forth. Uh, you know, the commanders, they can't carry out the types of operations that they want, right? So this is very fair criticism. Should we have had the ceasefire? It depends. It depends whether you prioritize the internal momentum, the support for the war, and the sort of dynamic between the political brass versus the military brass, or whether you value the military approach and the economic approach. Obviously, the economic approach has been uh, the sort of economic warfare that Iran is waging against the United States has been impacted with certain reckless statements that have been made by Iran, right? So this is very problematic, uh, but this is the way that it is for now. If Iran wants to change the dynamic, there are opportunities that it can seize, right? But we still don't see them being materialized. For example, uh, you have Karish gas reserves, and Hezbollah has its own dynamic with Israel, right? This is a very good choke point. But I mean, and I'm not trying to say that basically Iran dictates what needs to be done in the axis of resistance, but the problem is that there is a command at the same time that Iran doesn't do that. There is a joint command structure that exists here, right? And we have seen in the past that Iran actually has tried to de-escalate or prevent the groups from carrying out the strategies that they themselves have thought to be most effective, right? So rather than what people think and what the propaganda of U.S. Disinformation slash, again, propaganda machine tries to portray, Iran actually de-escalates, right? Which I'm not really particularly fond of. The the dynamic, the equation that is set in Lebanon, it's wrong. Mr. Alizadeh talked about how Iran shouldn't have drawn its red line to Dahia or South Beirut. Uh, I mean, I have a slightly different opinion about that. I think that red line actually is something that makes sense. But what I do disagree with, in terms of the strategy that Iran has adopted, is that Iran said that we are going to attack North Israel. No, that's not the tit for tat policy. You should have said that we are going to, uh, destabilize Tel Aviv, Haifa. That's the equation that you should have set, right? You couldn't really do something about like southern parts of Lebanon because unfortunately the inaction or I don't know, your strategy has brought you into the place that now the precedent has been set for south of Lebanon. But for south of Beirut, you could have acted more forcefully, and that brings us to the kind of escalation that is decided by these political decision makers like Supreme National Security Council, the individuals in that council. So I totally agree with these things, but these are, very, very, uh, very, very precise kind of criticisms. It's not like, oh yeah, Iran should have attacked and destroyed Israel. We could have never. I've explained this point time and time again, and people hate me for it because they think that I'm undermining the power and the might of the IRGC aerospace. No, but you will never topple a government. You will never stabilize a government. A regime like Israel by launching a few Khorramshahr or Khaybar Shekans here and there. That is not going to cut it. That's why I think that the ceasefire was actually the right approach. But what I do have disagreement with is like we go back to the not the overall strategy, but the operational level strategic decisions that are being taken. And there is a lot to criticize Iran for. But that big thing, that Iran should have gone on and it should have continued hammering Israel, that would have never worked. I'm sorry to burst people's bubble. You can't look at videos and see Iranian missiles passing through the Israeli air defense systems, and because of the initial emotions that you feel, think that it's going to succeed. They were carrying out, by CENTCOM's basically claim, roughly around 1,000 strikes against Iran. Did that change Iranian government? Did that topple the Iranian government? If they couldn't do that with us, then how can we do the same thing to them by launching a few, again, Khaybar Shikan missiles, Khorramshahr 4 missiles at the Zionist entity, while they freaking have like those bunkers? They even have nuclear bunkers. How could we do that to them? Simple answer, we couldn't. And that's why we had to change our strategy. But at this point, I'm basically repeating myself. So I'm going to. I hope that would have been, the right answer.
So
Vanessa, I see you want to say something. Oh, sorry, Ali. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may just add something to Ehsan, I understand Ehsan's frustration because he does. I spend most of my time in Farsi and with people inside Iranian polity, and Ehsan does a lot of English. When I can see his frustration, but let me just help it from a political point of view. It's not up to people outside Iran as a country of global South struggling for its survival and for pushing out imperialism out of region to criticize Iran nonstop. I think I would go even further than Ehsan. People have to act on behalf of Iran, on behalf of Lebanon and other places. Iran, like every other part of axis of resistance and every other part of global South, is a complicated situation with internal battles, regional battles, external battles, and so people need support. The reason I sometimes come and talk about this internal thing, because one view is that's none of the business of outsiders, what's happening inside Iran. But sometimes I come and explain it because I think it gives them a better understanding of why Iran at some point, now that this ceasefire is very different. But look at that. When Qasem Soleimani was martyred on 3rd of January 2020, Iran went for about 5 years of strategic patience. And there was a lot of frustration among both people in the axis of resistance and inside Iran. But then they kept it quiet. And the debate was more or less domestic because, and it turned out to be true. It turned out to be more or less not correct decision, but it was a rational decision because they were preparing themselves for a much bigger war. So in a sense, I would come and say from a European or Western or point of view, they should ask themselves what they have done in this battle. Have they, for example, tried to change the balance of power in the fight against Zionist forces in their own cities, in Dusseldorf, in Paris, in London, etc.? What have they done for axis of resistance and for this fight against imperialism in the region? And inside Iran, Iranian people who are on the street, they know how to change the balance of forces against pro-Western faction inside the state as well. They know how to do it, so etc. So in a sense, I can understand Ehsan's frustration about all these people who just in a relaxed place, they just look, and some of them even were not defending Iran back in January, but now they think why Iran doesn't destroy Israel. The reason is because Iran just got liberated 47 years ago, and Israel is part of Western imperialism, which is 400 years, 300 years, and so because many of you thought Iran will be destroyed and perish before on 28th of February when its leader died. So in a sense, how is it possible that you change your mind so quickly and now you feel like you are in charge and you are Iran is indebted to you? So in a sense, I think just you have to put them in the place, and I think Ehsan did a very good job regarding that.
Vanessa.
Yeah. I think just to come back to Lebanon, I know Ehsan and I have talked about the complications involved in Iran stepping in on, let's say, in support of the resistance in Lebanon. And Ali, you mentioned the fact that since the ceasefire, Israel has been able to occupy more land in Lebanon. While I agree with that, on the other hand, there's 2 points here. One is the point that there is constant collaboration and communication between all members of the regional axis of resistance. So if we assume that communication is ongoing, then the agreement should be with Hezbollah when and where Iran steps in. And I think the stepping in to prevent the bombing of Beirut was extremely important. Why? Because we already saw what happened on April the 8th, which is now known as Black Wednesday. And I'm based in Lebanon now, previously in Syria. What happened on the 8th of April, when there was a massacre, I think 150 strikes in about 10 minutes in some of the poorest areas of the southern suburbs of Beirut, where, of course, you also have many of the 1.2 million displaced already from the south. So to me, it kind of made sense because the battlefield in the south, largely on the ground, is going in Hezbollah's favor because the Israelis on the ground are totally unable to either occupy huge tranches of land, they can detonate it, they can bomb it from the air, just as they've always done historically. But Hezbollah is actually causing massive damage from a morale perspective, from a personnel perspective, from an equipment perspective, with the simple FPV drones that, by the way, they are now using the pager explosives as explosives with the drones to return to sender against the Zionist forces. And I think the example of how much this is damaging the Zionist morale is shown by statements like from Ben-Gvir, who is now saying we should be kidnapping Lebanese women and children to put pressure on Hezbollah to stop fighting. Right? If you imagine the pressure that Hezbollah has gone through from its own state, from its own people, to disarm, to withdraw from Lebanon, Iran stopped that by doing what it did. It may have been only a symbolic act in the view of many Westerners who want, again, Iran to come in and basically destroy Israel on behalf of Hezbollah. But it doesn't happen like that. What they did was to actually take the pressure off Hezbollah of Dahe in Beirut being bombed, which was a massive pressure, enable them to keep focusing on the battlefield where they are achieving victory, and Israel is depending on PR stunts like Beaufort Castle putting the flag and then they had to leave again. You know what I mean? So yes, of course, there is tremendous damage from the Israeli Air Force. But this is something that historically Hezbollah is relatively used to. They are not actually leaving the land, and that is the most important aspect in this. Plus, the support for Hezbollah is growing day by day, even here in Lebanon. There are foreign fighters coming into Lebanon to join Hezbollah forces, and they're being told to wait because Hezbollah right now is fine. So I think sometimes when we're talking about this, and I'm not saying that you do, but I think we all tend to overlook the positives. I know it's very difficult to find them from some perspectives, but there are positives from on the ground here in Lebanon. And when I speak to resistance-linked people here, they are all optimistic. So I think what Iran did was very intelligent. It was very rational, and it wouldn't have been done without communication with the leadership in the military wing of Hezbollah. So I just wanted to kind of add that in from what I'm hearing here in Lebanon. And then finally, my question, which is similar to Peter's, is we're seeing people in Iran keep going on the streets now for 90 days. I want to understand the effect this is having on the decision-making, both from, let's say, the economic camp and from the military camp, because to me, this is incredible. When people talk about the revolution, this for me is an example of the revolution, when people for 90 days are still going onto the streets, united across all sectors of Iranian society in support of their country in the middle of a war. It's kind of beautiful seeing this. So I just wanted to, anyway, that's it.
If I may,
Before we go to Ali, I think Ehsan needs to leave, right,
yes.
Ehsan?
In the eyes of the Westerners, it might have been a symbolic retaliation. The sad part is that I actually criticized Iran for not carrying out its attack against Israel in a symbolic manner. Actually, if you know what happened, Iran attacked Tabaria and Naharia and Ramat David air base. Tabaria is 30 kilometers to the south of Lebanese border, located in eastern parts of the occupied Palestine. Naharia is located 10 kilometers south of the Lebanese border in the western parts of occupied Palestine. In Tabaria, you had brigades 91 and 98 operating out of that base. And in Naharia, you had brigades 36 and 146 operating from the said air base. And finally, Ramat David was the place that the Israeli fighter jets were located, the squadron of F-16, F-18s, F-15s. So Iran actually responded in a very calculated military way. And I'm here, sitting here, criticizing Iran for not carrying out a symbolic strike to adjust the dynamics of the warfare in a political way, right? So just very funny that people actually don't know what they're talking about. But when it comes to the morale, and I have to leave very soon, thank you guys for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to be on a panel with all of you guys. But the morale is really, really high. I have to also mention something else. Uh, we refer to the Iranian leader in Iran as Rahbar Inqilab, the leader of revolution, because inside Iran we believe that revolution never exists, right? So that's why you see these people coming into the streets, and people might mistook it for a revolution, but what they see is this very hardcore supporter base of the Islamic Republic and Iran in general, uh, who are shaping the Iranian policy. Without their presence in the street, it would have never been possible for the IRGC Aerospace to attack Israel in support of their Lebanese brothers and sisters. When they announced the news about Iran retaliating, or more accurately, carrying out its humanitarian intervention in support of the Lebanese people, you saw the crowd just going nuts. Absolutely. It was like you explode a bomb in the crowd. They were really, really happy. And the following morning was even more strange, because despite the fact that Iran was attacked by Israel, uh, there was this very strange sense of pride among every Iranian and that supporter base that we are talking about, that we did the right thing. Yes, it was difficult. We were targeted, but we did what was right thing to do. And that actually, I think that, it's not easy demonstrating in support of your government for 100 days, 100 nights consecutively. It's not easy. You have things to do. And actually, these demonstrations have taken place during the Iranian holidays, uh, more specifically the Iranian New Year, where people go and visit their families. It's their off day, it's their holiday, so they might want to travel, and they set all of those things aside in order to show their support. And they had one key demand from the Iranian government and the Iranian armed forces. to not abandon Lebanon. And so I think that operation had a lot to do to boost the confidence of the Iranian people on the streets. And with that, I'm going to end my comments there. And thank you guys again for inviting me to your show. It was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you so
until next
much,
time.
Ehsan. It was a great pleasure to have you on again.
Thank you. And bye. Take care of yourself, guys. Stay safe.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Vanessa, I think you asked something about what was it again about the political atmosphere, right? What was it exactly? Your point?
Well, no, it kind of dovetailed into Peter's question. And I don't know if Ali has any further comments about what happened or is happening in Lebanon. But yeah, I guess this, because you're absolutely right that people in the West, and I include myself in that, even though I'm not there and haven't lived there for 22 years, their job or role, if you like, is to do what they can through direct action or indirect action to stop their respective regimes from being able to sustain Israel and sustain the global aggression that is actually ongoing at the moment. So I 100% agree with that comment, totally. And what I find astounding is, we talk about democracy in the West. We talk about the movement on the left, anti-war movements, anti-imperialist movements. But effectively what we're seeing in Iran with people coming onto the streets, as Ehsan said, even during holidays, even during family time, even through their own difficulty. And we're seeing Iranians returning from diaspora, from Europe, from the UK and so on, to support their country. And I think people are missing what an incredible scene this is and how this should be an inspiration to all of us as to how we actually pressure our governments in the West or wherever it is to actually follow through on representing the will of the people, which is to end these wars, end the support for Israel, end Israel's expansion in this region, end the oppression of the global South. And I think Iran is setting such a beautiful example, and yet to a large degree, it's kind of getting ignored. And I wonder why you think that is, or if you agree with that, actually, because maybe you don't.
Okay, so I try to respond to this, and I have to go as well, unfortunately. So let's go back to Lebanon, because I think there is a disagreement again inside Iran. When ceasefire was accepted, the 10 kind of bullet points as Iran's precondition for accepting ceasefire said peace in all fronts. It did not say peace in Lebanon, in Beirut. It said peace in all fronts, and it meant Lebanon. And exactly that's where Netanyahu tested the water. And I believe the day after, they did the Black Wednesday and they killed 300 Lebanese. And now, that's not what I'm saying from London, that's many people inside Iranian state retrospectively think Iran at that point should have said the ceasefire is not valid anymore and we are getting out of any form of negotiation. However, US and Iranians said that Ghalibaf did tweet at that time and saying that if you continue attacking Lebanon, we don't do it. But then Americans managed to deceive Iran. You have to understand, my point is Iranian kind of military, Iran's IRGC, Iran's kind of commanders of army, etc. For me, they are first class warriors, and of course, not in the way that Westerners think by kind of having very advanced technology. They are first class in their own style of asymmetrical warfare, but they exactly know what they do. They prepared for this not a year ago, 2 years ago, but 40 years ago. And so they are fully concentrated. But when it comes to political class, when it comes to Iran's negotiating team, you have to understand it is a relatively young state. And so, and also coming out of a semi-colonial situation, there's question of confidence. There's a question of knowing the back doors. And also, when it comes to negotiation, we have a history of being deceived by United States. JCPOA is a traumatic event in Iran, in which after 2 years, Americans and Europeans, they frauded Iran. They absolutely frauded Iran. And so that really destroyed a decade of Iran's lives. It destroyed 2 generations. It brought Iran's kind of GDP growth to -3%, -2%, brought massive recessions, brought people to the streets, and really made bloody riots, made millions of Iranians leave the country. That came not out of war, that came out of negotiation. The same way that 12 days war happened in the middle of negotiation. And this 39 days war happened in the middle of negotiation. So there is thankfully, the majority of Iranians, not only the revolutionary base, the majority of Iranians becoming kind of distrustful of negotiation, distrustful of the liberals' promise that we can make detente and that would open the doors of joining the global market to Iranians. That's what we heard for the last few decades from reformists, from liberals, from the centrists in Iran like Rouhani, Khatami, and even to some extent Pezeshkian. And as we are talking, Pezeshkian still is telling people that if we don't negotiate, what can we do? And so in a sense, the internal battle between the factions is important. So on the day that Black Wednesday happened on 8th of April, people on the streets came with big, very clear signs saying that we have to go back into war in support of Lebanon. And that has been very important. And my understanding of Iranian system is, if it wasn't the insistence of Iranians, and that's what Ehsan said as well, if it wasn't the insistence of Iranians on the streets, I think the pressure from the political and the capitalist class would be somehow that IRGC wouldn't be able to even attack Israel for the Zahiya equation. So what I'm trying to say is Iran is a dynamic, democratic, revolutionary situation in a very pluralistic way in which none of the factions can act ex nihilo or like with full authority. No one, even when Ayatollah Khamenei was alive, he didn't have the last say. Famously, he said negotiation with Trump is not honorable, is not rational, is not smart. And 2 weeks later, Arakchi was sitting with Witkoff in Oman. That's back in like February 2025. So he didn't have the last say. No one has the last say in a post-revolutionary pluralistic situation in which what I'm saying is at the moment, the people on the street who have been there for 103 days, they put a lot of pressure. And that's why the commander of IRGC Aerospace, Sayyid Majid Mousavi, in his first video message in the last 104 days, said 2 days ago that people continue staying on the streets, while he said the diplomacy and the field, the battlefield are united, and the streets are united, but he indirectly asked people to stay. If you want us to fight, stay on the streets. Yeah. So it is an open fight inside Iran. But going back to Lebanon, exactly, it's true. I made a documentary about Hezbollah last year after fall of Assad. About 1 million people have watched it on YouTube, and I invite you to go and watch. And there we explain that Hezbollah is very resilient. Hezbollah has had much darker days in 80s and 90s, etc., and he's always survived. But nonetheless, what Israel is doing also should not be undermined. Israel is not only kind of entering as excursions into south of Lebanon, is systematically destroying villages and gazify them. So destroy them with bulldozer after that. So after bombing, so they bulldoze them so people can turn them uninhabitable for like decades to come. And that seems to be a very malicious strategy that they have for long term. I'm sure Hezbollah in its guerrilla tactic can fight back. The FPVs are very effective, and Hezbollah is master of doing this kind of guerrilla tactics and taking them back. However, the question stays open. Can Iran do more, and could Iran have pended negotiation with the ceasefire in all of Lebanon or not? Could Iran have opened a bigger space for Lebanon or not? And I think now is a different situation, but back in time when the ceasefire was happening and Trump was much more desperate at the time to have the ceasefire, I think Iran has had the chance. And now I think, again, as I said, in the last week, it seems that the commanders of the army and IRGC are going to do what they should have done earlier, and the political class didn't allow them. Going back to inside Iran, unfortunately, the liberals and the pro-Western faction who were completely silent and at least symbolically in unity with the IRGC, is slowly coming out of their hiding places, is slowly venting criticism, and they are like bringing their own base back. So by saying that we cannot keep the internet closed, the filtering is damaging people, which is true, but that's how they are uniting and mobilizing their own base around this issue and around the issue of economy. There is some some interpretation, and I believe in that as well, that aspects of Iran's ruling economic class, and in conjunction with the Pezeshkian government, are not doing enough to control the economy. And so the inflation is very taxing on people. And so I don't want to enter conspiracy theory, but I think instead of trying to increase the resilience of Iran's economy to prepare it to enter into war at any moment, they are actually making it vulnerable. So from the beginning of the war, from the beginning, day one of the war to day 39, despite all the shock that Iran absorbed, the price of dollar went down. So Iranian rial got more valued. And then since then, got depreciated again, about 35%, 40%. And that's a lot. That means like an additional 40% inflation to what was the inflation caused by the shock therapy of December. And then Pezeshkian comes and blame all the inflation on the war. So you can see the language is the war brings inflation, which is absolutely nonsense. And I have interviewed many of like Iranian economists who explain, those who are based in Iran and teach in Iran, they explain that this inflation has nothing to do with the war. The war in Iran hasn't caused the inflation. That's number one. The number two is like not acting urgently in order to create parallel corridors to relieve the pressure of the Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, because Iran does have option for railway corridors, for land corridors to export oil through Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkmenistan to China. And I think for that, you need to have much more determination. So all these things are open debates every night on the streets. People go, there are like platforms, they go and speak, and they sometimes, mainly, often they criticize government for not entering into wartime economy. And so in a sense, the debate inside Iran and the battle inside Iran is the liberals who want to normalize the situation into peacetime as if the peace has already happened, and so make people to put the arms down and get into more relaxed attire, whereas the other faction, which is significant, believe that we have to be armed, ready, because this war hasn't finished and it can start any moment, and Iran's readiness for re-entering into an all-out war is the one which provides the deterrence. If we leave that aside, we will lose our deterrence again, and Israel hasn't finished with the region. So in a sense, let me just finish with this. In a sense, while in that 39 days war, I myself, who had I was broadcasting every night, that's why I'm physically and physiologically exhausted, and I think I aged 10 years in that time. We were focusing on Western media who themselves were confessing on Iran's advances, and they were explaining how much Iran has gained. But now the liberals, in a very cunning way, are using that to say, "Oh, Iran has won the war. We don't need to win. We don't need to war to go back to war anymore. We don't need to resist anymore." So the danger is now Trita Parsi's speeches, for example, get happily translated by liberals inside Iran to say, guys, look at that. We, as a winning, victorious party, we should sit down on negotiation and make a detente with US like every other country. War is over. Wartime is over. Whereas people on the street know that the war cannot be over because Israel is doing actually a genocide in south of Lebanon, is an ethnic cleansing of Shiite community in south of Lebanon. And if you don't stop it, then this can continue. I mean, this can continue from Gaza to Lebanon, and then they're going to go to Syria possibly. And it seems that we should not forget why this war happened in the beginning. This war didn't only happen to do regime change in Iran. That was a bonus if they could have achieved. This war happened to achieve two main goals. Number one, denuclearization of Iran for the foreseeing future, the next 10, 20 years. Two, degrading Iran militarily, economically, and creating enough kind of polarization inside Iran's polity that for the next 5 to 10 years, Iran cannot project its power on the west side of Middle East or west side of West Asia. So in a sense, Iran gets busied with its own vicinity while Israel is finishing the job with Gaza, annexing West Bank, going and possibly occupying south of Lebanon, south of Litani River, then kind of getting inside Golan Heights and working on David Corridor to create a land route all the way to the back of Iran's Kurdistan. So in a sense, while America has to a large extent lost this war and didn't achieve any of its claimed objectives, but I think when it comes to Israel, we should be slightly more conservative. I think Israelis still are in line with their destructive genocidal kind of goals, and I think one should be more conservative in calling Israelis lost the war.
Well said. Well said. I know you have to go. Just if I could ask one last thing right before you go, if you could tell the viewers, if they're living in Western countries, it's an English speaking audience, probably most do. How can people be of help beyond doing what Vanessa suggested, which I fully support, but beyond unfucking our own local politics and taking power back from our ruling class? Is there any way that people can support people in Iran right now?
More than Iran, I think Iran is a country of 92 million people with a lot of kind of military, a strong kind of society, a strong kind of politics, very resilient. I'm more worried about Lebanon. Look at that. In that 39 days of war, 3,000 Iranians got killed and martyred. In that 39 days of war, 3,000 Lebanese got killed. Iran's population is 30 times more than Lebanon. So with Iranian standard, that would be equivalent of 90,000 Lebanese died. I think the one which needs help at the moment from the Western societies and Western anti-war movement is Lebanon. And it's utterly shameful that people are not outside in the streets of London, New York, Washington, and Paris demonstrating for to stop Israel genocidal war. It's absolutely abhorrent how the Western anti-war movement, when it comes to Iran and Lebanon, they act differently than when it was about Gaza. I've been talking to Lebanese people. I know there's one little difference, and my Lebanese comrades, they were saying that because Lebanese are slightly more reserved in broadcasting when they get attacked, they get martyred. So we don't see that clear first-hand imagery of the disaster and the atrocities that Israel is doing. Whereas when in Gaza, I think Gazans were very, very amazing in recording and broadcasting those, like, really, they allowed us to see for the first time ever a genocide live on our mobile phones. That's maybe number one. But the second one, which is more important, when it comes to axis of resistance, the West is more reserved. And many of the anti-war movements, who someone can call them, they can call them controlled opposition, they are more careful because they would like perfect victims, people who are dying, people who are not fighting back, whereas Lebanon is a resistant state. But I think Israel is doing genocide. Why stop the war coalition in Britain? Why the anti-war movement in America? They are not on the street every week. That's unacceptable. So I think that's number one to do, to focus on that. And second one is again, we didn't see enough anti-war movement about Iran as well. Look at that. 2 million people came on the streets of London when I was here in 15th of February 2003. 15 million people came globally on that day. And then when it came to Iran, 10,000, 20,000. Why? Because Iran has been so demonized, because the Israeli propaganda has worked here. So I think first thing first, I asked them to join the dots. If you have seen what Israel has done, if you know Israel is genocide, look at what Iran and Axis of Resistance have done. Why they are being demonized? Because they stop against Israel. So how is it that you are against Israel, but then unconsciously you are also against Axis of Resistance and Iran and the rest? So join the dots and know what is your enemy and which side you're on.
Thank you. Well said, Ali. Well said. I had that same discussion a while back with one of our guests. With who was that? Was it with you, Vanessa? When I said that, I said in the West, people, Western so-called leftists and anti-imperialists are afraid to even support decolonial and anti-colonial movements because they're afraid to be called a terrorist. You know, you cannot even show your support for the Arab resistance, for example, in West Asia, because they're all. You were just discussing somebody like Trita Parsi. Well, I don't know if Trita Parsi said that, but I would say similar kind of figures in the media spaces who are always disavowing the resistance. And like, how can you be against genocide and colonialism and in the same breath say that the people resisting genocide and colonialism are bad people? Like, I cannot understand that. It's so frustrating.
Okay, if you allow me, I have to go, and that was wonderful to be here. So sorry to rush out, but hopefully next time we get better chance to talk more. And
absolutely,
best of
thank
luck,
you so
Vanessa,
much, Ali. That was great.
Lebanon.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, really enjoyed that.
Static crackles, voices rise. Truth breaks through their velvet lies. A screen of fire, a shield of steel. BettBeat media makes you feel. No borders, no change. No silence.